All right, I'm going to welcome our new hosts for this next session. Let's see here. Let's get Teresa. I can see you, and Josh. Fantastic. In fact, I will. I've got your bios here. Nice to meet you.
Sure.
Teresa is Vice President of Global Field and Partner Marketing at Calix North America, where she helps broadband service providers deliver exceptional subscriber experiences and accelerate profitable growth. At Calix, Teresa's field and partner programs unify product marketing and sales motions to help providers launch differentiated services faster. Her thought leadership across videos, white papers, executive forums guides BSPs worldwide on transforming subscriber experience and monetizing the smart home and small business. That sounds really relevant to our audience today. And Josh, you've got more than 2 decades of experience in the operations and technology space, bringing deep technical expertise, people first mindset to his role as Chief Innovation and AI Officer at Blue Stream Fiber. It's got AI right in the name. Love it, Josh. Since joining the company in 2019, Josh has held several leadership positions, overseeing engineering, systems, and network operations. Today, he's focused on harnessing AI and automation to predict and solve customer issues before they arise, eliminating the frustrating, familiar telecom interrogation and delivering a smoother, smarter support experience. That sounds wonderful. Welcome, Teresa and Josh.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Well, I guess we're going to assume that we're ready to go. And Josh, so, hey, it's really good to chat with you because, we've been talking AI here, you and I, especially for, I don't know, it's been quite a little bit here. But one of the first things we want to do while you and I kind of get going is we're going to ask our audience is where's their level of AI? Where are they in their journey for AI? So we're going to put a little poll out there and ask everybody to answer that while you and I kind of get going so that we can better understand who we're talking to today. So that'll be awesome. Why don't you, say a little bit about where you are from, because you're, AI at Blue Stream Fiber. Why don't you give us a little bit more about that as far as what's your specific role within AI at Blue Stream?
Yeah, so our journey with Blue Stream Fiber and AI kind of started in 2024. I thought at the time that there were a lot of other folks doing a lot with AI, and when I met with OpenAI and the team there, we were coming on board right after like Coca-Cola and Klarna and some of the others. And, being a people leader and doing engineering, I kind of came at this from a slightly unusual angle. We wanted to democratize the approach. This was an organizational change that just involved new tools. And a lot of what we've done at Blue Stream Fiber sits in that, automating tasks, keeping a human in the loop phrase. And that has helped to govern kind of our adoption curve and the policies that we have. So that's Blue Stream Fiber's, journey so far. And I know Calix is doing,
Yeah,
lots. Yeah.
we're doing a lot down kind of similar area, but we at the company got started. Gosh, it's been a couple of years ago where we really started bringing AI in and exploring it internal. So we needed to have our people understand, what can AI really do for you? How can it help us in our day to day? Maybe what are some of the things then that we could start to imagine that we could utilize it for as we move forward with our customers as well. So, we started with Copilot. We're a Microsoft shop, so we've got all of so Copilot is the tool. But the thing we did was we put a few guardrails around it, and we basically said the only thing from an AI perspective you can do is use Copilot, and we basically locked it off so nobody else could get to the other tools. The benefit of that is we know that our internal data has been, well protected. There's a negative because, as we all know, as we've been talking AI, people find benefit of different tools, different sources, different LLMs. And so we do kind of get a little bit limited from that perspective, but we can talk more about that later. I think we're doing pretty good on the poll here. And, you and I kind of were trying to guess before we got together here, what would be the answers to the poll. I think we're kind of, interesting. We guessed pretty close to right. We're seeing a good amount of the audience is still really in the experimenting phase. But we have some that are a few use cases in productions. That sounds about where we thought people would be.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that there's 20% or higher of like people that are actually finding ways to do repeatable process.
Yeah,
Um,
that's really nice. Go ahead.
you know, no, I was just going to say like with the Bluestream side, right? We didn't really start with AI. We wanted to start with processes that we could easily repeat. So, our dispatch operation, qualifying every single work order going out into the field, transferring that into $2 a month in API tokens, um, is a huge kind of return and a good lighthouse project. Um, that won us the 2026 AI Innovation Award. So the interesting part though is that the hardest part about that really wasn't technical; it's organizational, right? Process clarity, decision rights, who gets to override the AI when they think it's wrong. Um, what really looked like an AI problem was just a workflow hygiene issue where we've just been tolerating it for a very long time. So for the folks that are, listening right now that are thinking about different workflows, the surprise isn't necessarily what AI can do. It's just how much of your work is already AI shaped and just waiting for the right tooling to get in there and go. So
And that's actually a really good point because as we look at AI, one of the questions that you and I have really talked about is um, what are some of the business problems that really drive the AI exploration? Kind of like, and what has surprised you early on as far as you've thought that through. So that kind of leads from what you were just saying.
yeah, um, I think for us, the back office work was lots of pattern matching, right? So what are people doing heroically that you don't know? So when you go in and you start to process map these things out, once you see it, you really can't unsee it. And how quickly, I think we all are feeling this a little bit that's working in AI, is how quickly the ceiling kind of moves. So capabilities that were impossible 6, 9 months ago are now table stakes. So if you're designing for today's model, you are unfortunately like building something that will be replaced probably by the time that you're able to procure and build. That is a tough piece.
That is tough. It's interesting because I was thinking about that, just personally for a second. I worked on something and I used Claude to do that. And it's been a little bit since I touched it. And I'm like, okay, I'm actually nervous. If I go back and look at it, what could I possibly do with that now? And that was writing an AI, an app for an iPhone. I used Claude to do that with, their code. And now, who knows what my app could look like? I think I need to go and spend some time doing some more of that. And if you think about it in business side of things, Claude, I'll use that example again because recently I was talking to somebody and they said, "Oh, you've got to use Claude again." I hadn't really been using Claude, and so I had some research I needed to do for Calix. And I went and I asked it my prompt, I gave it my prompt and said, "This is what I'm trying to do." And oh my gosh, it spit out an entire research paper with images, graphs, everything in it, all complete. I'm like, okay, what would have taken me normally, that research that I was doing would have taken probably a solid week or more, was now something that took me 10 minutes at most. And it's probably just tuning the prompt that was the most of that time. It's insane the ability that what we can do today.
Yeah, I mean that look, we have skills now that take those one-off prompt copy pastes that we would have to do every single day, and it just becomes repeatable, right? And eventually those skills will become workflow agents, and those workflow agents will become who knows what in 6 months. So it really is maddening sometimes.
Maddening. Tell me more about that. Maddening.
Well, once you have, I think we in the engineering side of me is like once you have something built and working, you generally don't touch it, right? You let it run until you absolutely need to. And in the case of AI, the jumps in capability almost push you to go back and say, refactor this. Something that
Mhm.
would have sat there for a year or 3 years in a life cycle is now something that could be replaced in 6 months. So
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you're right. I think as we think through AI and some of the things, Calix is doing even, and we'll talk more about those in a few minutes, but is, you know, whatever we can do today, we have to constantly be thinking about what we would like it to do. Because in the end, I think it's not even going to be an end, but in the very near future, it will be able to already do that. So
Mhm.
things are moving so fast, it's insane. There's data that talks about, people adopting the internet, it took 10, 15 years or whatever, and even, in some cases, decades. You think, some people don't even adopt the internet now. And, in 3 years, there was like 500 million AI users, something. It was, insane data points. So in your journey, when has AI really stopped feeling experimental and really starting to feel reliable? And I think that's a key word there, reliable.
Yeah, so I it the for us, it was the moment it got boring, right? I think dispatch optimization felt more experimental for us for about a quarter, right? We had triage, and then we moved AI into routing, Google Road Miles and making sure that techs aren't crossing each other's. Once it became something nobody talked about on morning meetings, then that was kind of our signal. Um, so, yeah, another one that we had is, for legal, we have now an AI contract analyzer that goes through all of these contracts, tries to find language that they need to cross reference. And before that would take weeks in a firm, and, first year associates, 3 weeks can be
Mhm.
done in less than 4 hours with a single person. Um, Operational AI is boring AI. um, if you're still excited about it, it's probably still slightly experimental in your organization.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting. That's an interesting way to see it, but I don't know. I almost might argue with you because I'm excited every time I see something new. I was literally just looking at Calix's roadmap for the things that we have coming out. And, very soon we'll be able to think about, have a marketing agent that is literally looking at all the data from a service provider, looking at and identifying subscribers that they can literally go market a new service to. It can all be done automated, and this is about making sure people in the business can help them grow their business faster. So you can literally set an agent off to go find the subscribers that it needs to market a particular new service to, have it do that, and
Who
move.
who needs more Wi-Fi coverage, right?
Yeah,
Who's using 100% of their bandwidth more than 40% of the time, right?
exactly. The capacity issues. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, operators are sitting on gold mines of data, right?
Mhm.
And they can use AI and use like what you're doing at Calix to help expose that level of detail that they just don't see today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know we also have another poll that I'm going to go ahead and have them put up for us, just so that while we keep talking here for a minute, is, and this poll is what has been some of the primary barriers to advancing AI in the organizations. So while they answer that, continuing to think through some of the things that people can do. Um, is you mentioned capacity. So, and you mentioned, there's a variety of things, but I've been talking with a few folks recently about how can we take problems that subscribers have, identify that problem without necessarily having a human in the loop, and ultimately even identify if we need to send a truck, get that truck going. I mean, obviously you have a human now to go fix it, but if they have to be out there, and we can find the closest truck. So if you think about it from all the data that's in your network, or, that Calix can provide, it's you have the information to know whether, for instance, light levels on the fiber are having an issue. And you know that a subscriber is going to start to see that by X amount of time, and you know that a truck happens to be generally nearby right now. Why wouldn't you just have that truck go over there and fix that problem very quickly? before sending them another whole time. So think of the efficiencies that you can gain, the time, the faster time to repair for the subscriber, all of that. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that I think would be like the gold standard that we all want
Mm-hmm.
to do and want to see. I think though, especially in the operator space, you have multiple vendors and multiple different kind of data lakes. So the thing that I will pressure to everyone that's listening is, data, figure out your data before you figure out your model, whether it's Copilot, Gemini, and the other pieces, right? Organize your environment into, some sort of medallion architecture that, cleans, refines, and puts all this in a spot that AI can grab in real time in a meaningful fashion. And then to do this, you kind of need some deliberate sequencing, right? Internal before external, low stakes before high stakes, right? We kind of earn the right to do customer facing AI by doing internal AI well for ourselves. Um, so by the time anything touches a customer, we have rehearsed that on ourselves 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we are just now, again, we've had AI for about a year and some months. We're just now starting to get into, let's put a chatbot out on the website. Let's put a helper in the IVR that listens to what you're calling in for to get you to the right person right away. Those are things that sound great right up front, but require a lot of care and feeding and understanding of where your data is at before you deploy.
And Josh, I love that we've talked about that saying, there,
Yep.
where essentially, you earn the right to do customer facing AI by doing it internal well first.
Yeah.
By the time everything goes to the customer, it should have been tested 100 times on ourselves. I think that's really true. And we at Calix did the same thing. So we had, many of these sessions where we had our employees go and work on AI. We had AI prompt tournaments and all kinds of different things we then have turned into internally. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and we've now got an agent that helps us identify the severity of cases, when there's an issue, so it identifies quickly the severity of cases, the communication path, really starting to get that type of stuff so that we can internally normalize our communications very quickly. But that's helping us be efficient internally, and then turn around and now how do we do that and make it external to our customers as well? So we have our poll here. So what's been the primary barrier to advancing AI? And I think that's interesting. Determining, really identifying the right business use case, I think is what I'm hearing, is seeing that. Now the next one is competing priorities or limited capacity. Now that doesn't surprise me because we
Yeah.
all have a day job, and we know the process that we're trying to follow. It may have lots of manual steps, but at the same time, we know the process. So now if we want to go and modify the process to incorporate, new capabilities into it to make it more efficient, it's not something that just happens. You have to actually do the work to do that. So go ahead.
No, part of having like some of these barriers and identifying these pieces is making sure that you have stakeholders from kind of, I would say, every single part of your organization. My um, my culture theory here is that if you democratize access and you don't gatekeep AI into kind of like a single silo, you can actually solve a lot more problems than um, you'll necessarily get when you say, "Hey, we want to talk to you about AI for your department." When we can show them how to create a skill or show them how to create a GPT that can contain a repeatable process or a repeatable workflow, they start to see the good in what's there, and now they're not spending 5 minutes combing through data, filtering something in Excel that they can now hand to a GPT to help get an output, in short order for quick turnaround.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey,
Uh,
and sorry.
no, go ahead. Keep going.
Pacing is also kind of a leadership decision, not really a technology decision. The model is always going to be ready before the organization is. So, have those conversations and come up with a framework that works for your organization that says, this is how we want to adopt, this is who we want to include, these are the guardrails that we want to make sure are in place, and find a low stakes, highly repeatable process that you can use to show return on investment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think I agree with you on the whole, it has to come from the top. So in any organization, the leader has to be really encouraging everyone down below and has to be doing it as well. So, we see in our company, all of our top executives utilize AI for a variety of things. And it's interesting, what they use it for and how we learn from what they use it for. And so that kind of funnels down. We start to see the benefits, and then everyone in the organization starts to adopt it based on, oh wow, you did that. How? There's the different scenarios. You generated, like I said, that research report that I did. That I guarantee you, I was researching 10 companies. Nobody researches 10 companies in 10 minutes. It doesn't happen, you know. But with AI, I could research 10 companies in 10 minutes and have an amazingly complete report. So those are the types of things internally. And then we turn that around and take all of this data and extend it to the use cases, to our customers. So I do think we need to talk use cases and figure out how to help folks understand or define use cases, since that seems to be the top challenge that people seem to be having. Any thoughts there?
I think it's going to depend upon the discipline, right? So Bluestream Fiber is a multidiscipline environment. For dispatch, right? It's triage, taking rote work orders, routing work. For legal, it's contract analysis. For customer support, it's enablement, right? So you can take your support information, all of your SOPs, put it in a vector store, build an internal helper agent, and then that agent can then be used to help uncover things that they wouldn't see necessarily from swivel chairing between multiple websites. I think one of the first things that we deployed, we call it our Bluestream Fiber Support Guru, and it had access to pull the APIs where a lot of the Calix data, in our case, was kept. And in less than 10 seconds, it can come back to you and say, here's the health of the ONT, here's the health of the mesh Wi-Fi, here is the health of their set-top boxes, because we took the time to integrate the APIs to all of those different vendors. And it comes back to the representative before the person on the other end of the line is done explaining what their problem is. So that representative is now equipped and ready to go into that troubleshooting scenario or into that call with all the potential low-hanging fruit that's there that they need to be aware of.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so I mean, that's one of the things that we're doing. So when you look at use cases, so thinking about use cases the same way, which ones, there's the internal ones, and then there's the external ones. And so on the external side, there's some of those that are kind of really obvious. So, and to be honest, many of us have been dealing with this particular use case, frequently, customer service agents, so you get on the chat bots, we've called them chat bots forever. But I mean, what they have done and how much better they have gotten over time has been amazing. And so delivering to your subscribers, in any service provider, a chat bot, so that, and I always joke around, it's like, and nobody actually wants to call their service provider because they don't want to be on the phone dealing with, did you unplug it? Did you do this? Did you, all the various like menial steps that it takes to really truly diagnose it. Well, if you've got a chatbot that you can just communicate with easily, now that those steps can go at your pace. You don't have somebody on the phone, and you can even do it while multitasking in a meeting, potentially, depending on what the steps are. So, those are the kind of things that I think people will start to see. And then, I already gave a couple of examples, trying to avoid truck rolls, those types of use cases are definitely ones from an operational perspective. I also gave an example of a marketing use cases as well, finding, subscribers that are having connectivity issues in their home, but maybe it's not in their home, it's in their backyard. They have a large backyard. Well, now all of a sudden you have the opportunity to upsell them, more Wi-Fi mesh outdoor units, that type of thing.
Yeah, and I want to point out for the audience, like I think for all the examples that you and I both gave, right, that there's kind of the same pattern underneath all of those, right? There's decision support, the drudgery removal. It's not necessarily customer facing automation, right? If you can do that in your organization, that's where trust is going to get built, and that will earn you the right to do those harder things that you might be thinking about today that maybe aren't quite there or you want to get to. Um, so
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of trust, how did you introduce AI in ways that built confidence, rather than resistance in your organization? Because I have talked to people where they're absolutely resistant to adopting AI.
yeah, so look, y- we have to name the fear. We have to not dance around it, right? We need to automate tasks. We don't want to automate whole jobs, right? It can't be a slogan. It has to be a commitment that you make out loud, your town halls, with specifics. When employees know the role that you're going for, they stop hedging and they start contributing. The other side of it is, I know I've said this, but we democratize our tools. So we gave them prompt packs across multiple different departments. We didn't concentrate AI capability onto a central team. We put it in everyone's hands. We had a champion that was either volunteered, or I like to say voluntold, to come to our like pre-launch and say, hey, here's how you can use this in your day to day. And if you find a workflow, maybe we create a GPT around it. Because again, this is 2024. This is, we didn't have skills and the other things that we have today. So we put it in everyone's hands. And we taught them how to use it well. And then when we launched, those champions became not necessarily advocates, but people that other people in their department could go and talk to. That wasn't like, three levels above them. Like
Right.
people sometimes afraid to come ask me like a question about AI, and I'm like, no, 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 I want you to do that,
Right.
right? Don't look at the title, look at the person. I will help you, and
Hmm.
that has to be my goal. Um, we also, I think, during the launch, right, we made it a game, not necessarily a mandate. We didn't require people to use AI, so we did, you know, um, Amazon gift cards for like, hey, this is, come up with a novel use, right, for your
Hmm.
department. Share it with everyone. Um, it turns a dreaded process into a showcase, and that gets shared. Um, People start to train those like AI prompting muscles. No one but feels like put out by it. Um, my takeaway that I want to kind of give everyone is that employees will trust AI when leadership is visibly accountable to, like, for those outcomes, and visibly you know um, interested in making sure that the people are in the loop of those decision making processes.
Oh yeah, no, that's a really good point, because we do as leaders set the stage, set the trust level effectively for all the people within the organization, for sure.
Hmm.
And so let's see. I think we have actually one more poll that we're going to go ahead and put up, and then we'll get into a couple of additional questions. I didn't really cover governance though while we're letting the poll come up. Um, you know, how are how is your organization setting up, government governance and trying to deal with the speed? So we've talked a little bit about speed, but pacing AI into the business versus, I mean, obviously throwing it into there and wouldn't be successful. But how are you really doing that?
Yeah, so we started off, of course, with, I would call it like your typical, written guardrail policy. Everyone, we knew in 2024 when AI started to become very, very popular, that employees would go out and use their own shadow AI, just like we have shadow IT
Mhm.
sometimes in every single organization. And we had to have a policy that says, look, we know we can't necessarily stop you from doing this on your phone or these other ways. Here's what you can and can't do with our data. And if you're using public,
Mhm.
um, here's how you sanitize. This is what you don't do. Because again, AI was then and is still now still a little bit kind of like wild, wild west. So now we've evolved that with you know Anthropic and OpenAI to have AI policy guardrails written into the portal. We have skills that are installed from our people and culture team to prevent like PII information from being used in an incorrect way. So it's gotten much better, but
Mhm.
there's still it is still early on how you kind of deliberate and sequence um, the different ways that employees can use this with your data. Because before it was very hard to reach the data, it was
Mhm.
very hard to understand it, and now you've given them a buzz saw, and we don't want people necessarily cutting limbs off with these things. So uh, there's lots that you can do, also kind of like in Active Directory and SSO to prevent certain access from certain data. So it's made us kind of revisit things as simple things like SharePoints, right?
Yeah.
Um, there are organization-wide SharePoints that not everyone even knows exists, but now if they do a simple search in ChatGPT or OpenAI, all of this data that's in there is now uncovered. So it's teaching us to be better stewards of our own data.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with that completely, and that makes me laugh. And I'm going to tell you why in just a second. I forgot to say with this poll, if we don't have the answer that you're looking for on here, as far as why you think you'd be using, AI adoption, which outcome matters most, please just add it to the chat too, because we could not be all encompassing for this one. But the funny thing is that I wanted to get back to is when we first started using Copilot at our company internally, I would do a search in Copilot, like find me blah blah blah, and whatever it was, and all of a sudden I'd be like finding tons and tons of files, and it was like, okay, that's really interesting. Okay, here's a half written one. Here's So now what I didn't know was are the data, the files that I'm using or looking at, are they even valid? They could be drafts. They could be old. I had no idea what was the latest. I think some of that has been ultimately cleaned up. I think we are also knowing more about what's available, or what's right to use, and being a little bit smarter at prompts too. But I mean, that it was interesting, all of the things we started finding. And so we got our IT department, I know, got much more involved in trying to look at setting, permissions and ownership of files and how we're doing things there for sure. So as we look at this poll, I don't know if anybody put anything in the chat at all. Let me look here. We do have. Oh,
Yes, we did get a comment from Stephen, Teresa.
yeah, I see that. So there was no security considerations in the poll, data privacy, and that's actually a really good point. We didn't add that. We could probably add, I don't know, probably five more other options in here too, at least. But and all of the above option is
I think
true.
we joked
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we did joke about that. It could be every single one of them because it ultimately, I think we all think of AI initially for the first one, which is why it's the highest. That makes so much sense. Um, I like the second one too. And I like it personally because I have found that in my work, I use it to bounce ideas off, come up with new things. And it helps me think about things in a way that I wouldn't have thought about it myself, which, it's like having that brainstorming partner sitting there with you where you then can come up with many good ideas. So what about you, Josh? What are your thoughts on what we're seeing here?
Uh, I fully expected on the first two. Long-term competitive advantage. That usually I don't see that when I have some of my conversations at some of the in some of these. So it's good to see that people are thinking about it as kind of like, you know, 9 months, a year from now, 2 years from now, what does this necessarily look like? Um, Operational risk and consistency in building employee confidence and trust. I really want to impress upon folks that it's really important that you do build employee confidence in the tools that you do roll out, whether it's like a democratized here, people have access to ChatGPT or Claude, or agentic workflows with dashboards. Make sure that those people are somewhat trained and understand the process of what's going on in the background, so that they can help you correct it. Because you never just want to hand it off the shiny dashboard to them a day later and say, "Here you go."
Yeah, that makes sense. I think they're going to get us to Q&A here pretty quick. So let me ask you this one
Sure.
last question, Josh, because I think this is really important. You know, what do you think, and I think we've maybe touched on this a little bit, but what will differentiate organizations that used AI thoughtfully over the next few years?
Uh, so the broadband industry, again, in my experience, right, has a long history of getting really excited about technology, and I think we're all there right now. And then really underestimating the organizational work that's required to make it real. I'm in the fiber business. Calix is in the fiber business. It took a good 20 years of having fiber in the ground to really execute it onto where we started to get it in the home consistently, right, everywhere. AI will be faster, but it's not instant. And I think that the operators who I think that win this and come out on the other side well are going to be the ones who paced it on purpose and didn't jump in without a life vest.
Yeah, those that jump in without the life vest, back to the person who highlighted security concerns, from the poll. I think that, I had this question from a general manager at one of the events I was at one time, and he was using Gemini, and he put some information in, he had information in his email, and his email that he was using happened to be a Google email. So then he's in Gemini and he was asking some questions, and before you know it, he was getting answers that he thought were private out of the Gemini AI because it was all connected. And he's
Mhm.
like, whoa, okay, this is a problem, and so back to the point that we made before is people have to really think. And I love that you guys have done, a lot of specific training of your teams of what is okay to put into AI and what's not, because I think that's really important. And I don't think everybody understands what that could lead to if they don't pay attention to that. So, okay. Um, are
Can
we
we do some questions, Teresa?
wait for questions?
We
Yes.
do have some. Yeah, absolutely. You already covered the kind of, or you began to cover the topic of data privacy and security. That's a really good one. I want to go back to one or two that were sparked by some of the polls. It was
Okay.
really interesting to see where people are in this journey. And Josh, I think it was you who used the term an AI shaped problem. I
Mhm.
want to come back to kind of the organizational. Like I think it we're hearing you circle around it again. The kind of the organizational mistakes people can make in their AI journey. But can we talk about like what sort of problems aren't AI shaped? Like, are we seeing kind of early mistakes there, or is it possible that ultimately there will be no problems that aren't AI shaped? What are your thoughts on that? This is for both of you.
I can start. I don't think that there will ever be, I think, problems that I don't think AI will ever take 100%. We'll start there. I think there are high stakes strategic conversations, relationship building. Those types of things can't be farmed out to AI. AI can give you insights on data, can help you understand uh, pieces, but AI doesn't get nuance, right? When an AI IVR or an AI helper on a call hears a customer swearing, it can transcribe the words, but it doesn't necessarily understand the context or the tone, right? So that human, piece still needs to stay there today, in my opinion. Um, Now, 10 years from now, who knows, right? 2 years ago, AI wasn't doing math or doesn't wasn't doing math very well, right? A year later, it passed the bar exam.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to never say never, but is it possible? Yes, but in the grand scheme of like how we think about context in the future and relationships with either businesses or vendors or our own employees, you don't want to hand that over to AI. That needs to be human led for 100% of the time.
Any thoughts on that, Teresa?
Oh, Josh is right on in the sense of, um, the human aspect of everything that we do is to some extent part of what makes our products, our services, our solutions be better, be what they should be, and deliver to the communities that we serve. So we have to continue to make sure that we have that as part of it, and we're thinking about it there. So we won't want it to take over for us from that perspective. But continuing to do have it continuing to do, as Josh put it, tasks that are repetitive, are things that are mathematical, things that are analyzing data that will provide you with outcomes that you wouldn't normally find. A human's not going to be able to go through pages and pages of data and have a really good answer. Those are the types of things that make AI really powerful and help us then use our brains for other things. And I know I see in like the public chat, there's somebody here that says, does your company plan to eventually reduce workforce due to AI? And I want to actually answer that, because I want to say no. And the reason is not we don't reduce because of AI. What we do is people's jobs will change. So what the people that do today may be doing something different, 5 years from now because of AI. That doesn't mean they lose their jobs, and we as a company do not plan to do that anyway. But it's you find new roles, you find new things. Think about it like the Industrial Revolution. Back in that day, before the Industrial Revolution, a lot of people had a certain set of jobs. Once that came into being and we had factories, they now had new roles, new jobs. People got trained for new things. That's kind of the way I think things are going to happen moving forward.
Fantastic. Yeah, the another kind of polling point of interest was the relatively small percentage of people that were not understanding perhaps the organizational challenges. You talked both. I mean, Josh, I remember you talking about like kind of skunkworks AI. We talked about top down as well as bottom up initiatives. And of course, either approach creates concerns about process, ownership, accountability. But if we're not yet seeing that ownership is a problem, or not yet really understanding how governance is going to influence the organizational adoption, like what are those other organizational, I don't want to say roadblocks, but like inefficiencies? What are the things that we're really going to have to get right? Because I'm hearing the org is going to still be here. The tools will be increasingly automated, but humans are still going to be needed as part of this. What does that organizational change look like?
There's a lot of pieces to pick apart there. The one that sticks out the most, yeah, no, the part that sticks out the most in my mind is, and I think Teresa kind of touched on it a little bit, is like once we build more automations and these are up and running and they're consistent and they're reliable, we have to make sure that the people that we have in those positions come along for the ride, right? They have to, I don't want to use the word reskill, but it's moving quickly. We do open office hours at Bluestream Fiber twice a week for every single person in the company to come and bring either their AI problem or something that they'd like to automate or learn how to automate through. And there needs to be kind of a culture of openness that helps them understand that, like, this is here. We all are going to be dealing with AI in our future, kind of, regardless of whether we want to or not. The genie is out of the bottle in the industry. So let us help you, train you how to use this, so that, whether you're here with Bluestream Fiber for the long haul or you want to change jobs, you actually have a skill now that you can take with you that says that you're ready to use AI in any other discipline that you choose in your future.
And that's fascinating, because it is one of the first times that we've had a class of tools that is really usable by everyone in the org, which I find incredible. We've never had that before.
Yeah.
For everyone in the org, in every role in the org. And as you train the LLM that you're using internally to do what it does, you can make it can actually then turn around and train your people. So back to that upskilling capability that we've talked about, is now people hey, I want to do that. Well, now you can ask the AI, well, what skills do I need to do? Tell me what training courses I need to take. How can I get to that point? Think of the things that your people within your organization can do to better themselves or get to the new role that they want to get to. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. AI used to be how do I do A plus B?
Right.
Now you can go to AI and say, how do I plan to get to B from A? Um,
Mhm.
Teresa was talking about this and it brought up a really salient point. It's like our support guru at Bluestream Fiber, whether you've been here for 2 years or 5, gives you the same response if you're asking it to troubleshoot a customer. So if you're early on in your journey with Bluestream Fiber, there are guardrails and a helper there that explains why certain values mean certain things for a Calix piece of equipment or an Evolution piece of equipment and so on and so forth.
Uh-oh.
We don't hear you, Jeremy.
Sorry, I was. I'm having to mute myself because I got a little bit of a cough, but thank you. Quick follow-up question as we kind of pivot talking about the human skills to like skills and agents in the context of an organizational development. I really liked your idea of open office hours, but how are you finding, and maybe this is for both of you or maybe for you, Josh, how are you finding when you can encourage somebody to say, hey, there's that thing that we're seeing, it's being done too many times by hand, it needs to be turned into a skill, or even we've been asking the system the same questions and we're not really yet making that part of our organizational DNA. How do you encourage that curation? Because it feels to me like there must be some level of curation there.
There's a little bit. So I created a couple skills for Bluestream Fiber for like troubleshooting, network inventory. A gentleman in Montana helped create that one. I helped create like a branding skill. But as people come to the office hours and we do a monthly like stand up, like here's what's going on with AI for the entire organization. We tell them about it. We tell them to come to the office hours and we walk them through it. So I will actually have that person share their screen, create that skill, and test it in front of everyone so that they see that it actually delivers what they're looking for. So literally, like last 2 Fridays ago, we had someone from Care that was doing analysis on call transcripts and trying to find and do pattern matching. And I was like, this is a perfect thing for a skill. Let's create it. So we handed it a transcript, explained what was in the transcript, and asked it to use that skill to find certain patterns to see if what's coming out of this call. Why are these calls long, right? And it's because they're complex calls and these customers want to explain everything. So now he has a repeatable process where he just drops in a file, invokes the skill, and gets an output in less than 6 minutes.
So it feels like skill whisperer is going to be a new job description.
Well, I used to think of GPTs like stables, right? You have a stable of horses and you're going to have to go back and refactor them every so often. And now with skills has really changed the game. So workflow agents is coming up from OpenAI. We'll see how that changes it as well.
Fantastic. Well, we've got just a minute or two left, and it's been really enjoyable being both a fly on the wall in this conversation. Thank you, Teresa, for hosting it, and Josh as well for participating. And I've really enjoyed conversing with you as well. Any last thoughts you want to share? Where you can be found, perhaps? I know we'll be sending out all the info, and this one didn't have a deck, so I thought I'd wanted to give you a chance to give a plug.
Yeah, so I mean, we can both be found on LinkedIn, so that's the easy place to find us. You got our names right there on the screen, so that's probably the easiest name. I'm at Calix, calix.com, and we have our agent workforce cloud, which is rolling out agents on a regular basis to our service providers to provide new capabilities to help them do their business, so and grow their business as well. So that's where I am. Josh, anything else?
Yeah, so Bluestream Fiber, LinkedIn as well. I'll be at Fiber Connect next week. If any of you are there and want to spend any time, I'll be talking on a panel about scalability for AI and what the future looks like for that kind of infrastructure as it pertains to a lot of the MSOs that are building fiber today. And beyond that,
I'll be at Fiber Connect as well. So we'll both be there. So it'll be a nice place to be for sure.
I'll be there. I'll be there as well. Yeah, in a couple of weeks.
Good.
Looking forward to that. So
yeah.
we'll definitely have to catch up. And again, thanks for participating, and hope to catch you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you both.